Welcome everyone to Podcast the Vencore. I'm Admin 1 of NEFX.
I'm Eddie Dingle.
Yes, it's just us now. Windbreaker's missing out. Firstly, we should, I guess we could both go over quickly, like, how we're in the situation.
Oh, I mean how we found ourselves in Portland in my apartment recording a podcast?
Yeah, so it's a funny thing. When I had one last visit with Windbreaker and Eddie Dingle in Boise in May before I left for Portland, I thought I said something about it, that I was moving to Portland. Maybe I did or maybe I didn't. I know that I told Windbreaker, but I may not have made it clear to Eddie Dingle. And so I moved. And then later on, we were talking idly on Discord. And I think you may say something right about, oh, hey, sometime we should get together over in Portland, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, oh, yeah, sure, Eddie Dingle, thanks. I thought he was messing around with me. And because I just thought that he knew that I was in Portland. And then we talked more and more, and then I came to realize that he actually was for real. That he'd actually just, it's like you.
Well, see, Kyle, we know that you had mentioned this to me because I followed you here to Portland. You know?
Oh,
that's the whole.
That's what it is.
Here.
So I guess it's paying it forward. Actually, now that I think about it, what you probably did is you listened to the podcast episode from last time where Windbreaker talked about me stalking him and other people. You decided to pay the favor. You stalked me the whole time.
It always comes full circle.
Well, thanks for being the one person who listened to the podcast. But yeah, it was great. We met up at an arcade and talked more about a lot of things, including many nefarious schemes I'm going to unleash on you here today on Podcast the Vencore. But before we get into that, actually, Eddie Dingle, have you seen the Meet server lately?
I have not actually been on in a minute.
Yeah, me neither. I haven't because I've been, I guess, maybe too busy accepting our robotic overlords, meaning the bots. I haven't really played Marathon Online much, although I've certainly played Marathon maps, but I don't know. Come to think of it, I haven't had much of my finger on the pulse of the Marathon community in a while, have you?
No, I really haven't. I have not been in a minute. I don't know if there's any new developments that I'm missing out on here.
There's certainly a lot of big new developments. We're going to talk about them, but as I've mostly saved my marathon playing, my actual playing of Marathon for annual summertime Slaughterfest events, I haven't been keeping up on them as much, on like the finer details of how they actually play in a while. But I know there's a few big things, most notably, I'm sure Windbreaker told you something about it, Marathon Astoria. You heard about that?
I did see that came out.
Yeah. Apparently a sort of RPG element-laden game. And I'm just going to cut to the chase. I tested the thing. Yes, I'm the one. Not the only one, but I like to think that I'm the one. You know, I was actually fortunate enough to be reached out to behind the scenes well before it came out. We're talking like the Boise days, like, was it late last year, still acting like it's 2022. Late 2021, early 2022, they let me play test some of it, and I actually have still some unlisted videos that I sent them of me playing it. Maybe one day I'll release those from the vault, but really good stuff. You get to cast spells, and there's all sorts of new physics and Lua trickery that Deuce Tower especially unleashed because, you know, he's the main Lua wizard. That's his thing. That's how he was able to really perfect like the bot match script, and you know, he knows a lot about coding, hence he was able to generate all those huge levels. It's a totally new level for the game, and I definitely recommend playing it and checking it out. I didn't even play test the full version that was released. I play tested at least earlier versions of the earlier levels before they finished the later ones, and let's just say there's many different classes you could choose from, much like in an RPG. You get different specialties. It was kind of funny because as I was playtesting it, I kept having to be proactive about choosing to use some of the new abilities I had because I was still so conditioned to playing in normal marathon mode that maybe I'm also kind of humble bragging saying that I'm good enough to get by a lot of the time with heavy combat without having to use the special moves. But every time there's like, oh wait. And I think Deuce Tower even reminded me when he watched some of my earlier playtesting demo videos, like, hey, are you gonna actually use the lightning spell yet? You're gonna explode everything like it's in a microwave? Oh yeah, I gotta do that too, huh?
Yeah, definitely some pretty exciting, new features that you haven't seen in there before. Definitely spices it up, makes it pretty exciting. I need to complete a playthrough. I have not yet, but I definitely need to.
I think they would love if you did it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
It's always a special event when you crop up anyway. I think you've got it down to some kind of science where you like plan a schedule when you're going to show up.
Oh,
and every time you do it's an event.
It's just it's perfectly cycled around my next mental breakdown, and then I go away for a little while, then I come back.
We live for those breakdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe in some ways I could learn something from you and from Every Effects, because I notice, every time, like, Every Effects by this point, I'd say they have, they haven't yet exceeded what would fit on, say, a CD, whatever that's worth anymore. I mean, who uses CDs anymore? But, we still have that idea, I think, in the rearview mirror of, like, the album format being, like, maximum 80 minutes or something. And yet, every track is so rich, and of course it comes with an excellent music video, which, by the way, I recently was gifted from Windbreaker, and you saw it in the video. If you watched it, it's on YouTube. I uploaded a video of unboxing of a great gift that Windbreaker sent me of the actual drawings of various scenes from the Every Effects music videos.
Yes,
I got to see them up close.
Yeah.
Very precious.
Yeah.
I really love that. Yeah, of course, alongside me demonstrating the special Black Ice Demolisher keyboard that Iron sent me that was modded for crazy avant-garde noise-making purposes. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that, you just have such a way where every time you show up and do something, it's not just that it's already great, it's that people love it because it's an event and it's you and it's Every Effects and it's like a special thing. You're not like me where I'm like the dairy freeze guy every day. Here's your invention. Like, after a while, everyone just sort of fatigued. Like, okay, Abin one, go ahead. Yeah, it's really great. We'll review today, and then they never do.
Well, I mean, it is a question of how novel something stays. I'm sure if the whole Eddie shtick would probably get quite grating on a daily dole out. But with that consistency also comes something special, something extra. That's when you really, I think, probably can get into, your own kind of flow. I know by the end of Every Effects, we were really plotting out these three-dimensional graphical interfaces for this compilation release, where we really decided that the way forward with music was the integration into a 3D space. So we really were kind of spending months developing this, and it just got to a point where we started burning ourselves out over this idea where it was just getting a little too close, a little too real. We were working with these rather frightening concepts. I kind of think with this. I'd say it would go beyond a concept album. It was kind of like a concept life, like a concept creation. It just, we hit this flow that you can only get with a regular retouching of your art, of what you're trying to create. And for us, it just got too real. I think we just hit this point where we're hitting uncharted waters, right? We're touching into stuff that I think it was getting a little frightening. So we had to cool it off. We had to back it off, and maybe one day we can revisit it from a more kind of controlled expression of contact. But I think it was a big lesson in the way to carry your art forward in your life. and to maybe touch onto something larger than what you would hit with a more irregular, sporadic kind of breakout or vomiting, just in a single day kind of thing,
I hadn't really thought much of it that way, but yeah, it makes sense that you guys deal with very heady, sort of visceral concepts. Like, I get that sense even just from like looking at the stills of the artwork from the videos and everything. And so I guess it hadn't occurred to me how much it could get that real up close to that high definition in 3D and everything.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're brewing something that the world just isn't ready for yet.
No, and you wonder yourself. Some of these ideas start coming, and you really feel like they're coming from somebody's else. You're like, have I, are these? Am I getting a download from somewhere? Like, is this something external? Like, probing me? Is something? Where are these ideas coming from? Is it a collective unconscious? Is it an extraterrestrial source? Is it repressed memories? What where is this coming from?
Some sort of implanting happening.
Yeah, and is the world ready? That's definitely a question.
In which you are more the instrument than the thing you're using.
Absolutely, like a radio, just picking up a signal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, that comes from hitting that flow. You have to be ready to receive the message in order to pick it up. If you're not tuned to the right frequency and you're trying to pick it up, you get electrocuted that way. You get fried. You gotta be careful. That's where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
Entering into that kind of because when you're really dabbling with trying to hit true form, you're trying to create something truer than yourself, even, or find that expression of truth. That we all, I think, we all feel it, we all see it, we can touch it almost, and it's terrifying. And art is the attempt to express it, but there's danger. There's danger in dabbling in those waters, and you can lose yourself in it. So that's where you've really got to be prepared. You've got to be open. You've got to be willing to let go, and to let it take you where it's going to take you, because otherwise it'll destroy you.
Yeah, there's always a flip side to trying to catch lightning in the bottle. Sometimes you become the bottle instead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it breaks. You get struck like the lightning in the lightning spell in Astoria.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And you think about that too. What, like, if I was a bottle, if I was a glass bottle, would I see, like, if you were rounded, like, would you see in all directions? Would you be seeing inward in all directions? Would you change with whatever was inside of you? Is that what we are right now? Is it just that the particular thoughts in your head are just what's filling your bottle, right? And we can only look inwards, actually, but the trick is to see beyond. See that three-dimensional space beyond, or 360 degrees outside of our bottle, and understand that we just got milk rather than grape juice, and how to change that liquid, or at least understand the liquid we got inside.
Yeah, I definitely got some liquid inside, but. Yeah, and that's not even getting to the 5D space.
That's the next step.
Yeah.
That is the next step.
So do you think it's conceivable that down the line, every effects will create something of a 5-dimensional nature?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. I think that's really the only way forward, actually. I think that we'd be birthing that new. I think it'd have to be a collaborative effort. It'd take a lot of resource, but maybe even I think you have to maybe hit the dimensions one at a time, right? So we master the 3D, we get to the 4, then we can get to the 5, right?
Yeah, there'll just be something we'll have to build a collider for.
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll all be there. Every effects, any effects, and maybe some more effects we haven't yet heard about.
Yeah, I mean,
they're working on it, and then possibly channeling through, maybe even parallel us as, parallel FXs.
It could be an FX on every NFX.
Yeah. We might even have to bring no effects there.
And I mean that's the flip side of the duality, right? I mean you go inward, you go into the cave, you go into the subconscious realm, and you see the three masks of eternity split into three ways. You see on the left and the right side, looking in opposite directions, the masks representing every and no, right? Every effects, any effects, no effects, good and evil, and in the middle is the central mask, right? And that central mask goes beyond the insight of duality, which is the first insight, and that's the insight of singularity, right? Where it transcends that moral aspect of good and bad, and it is just a singular experience. That's the goal. That's the true expression.
You're hearing it here. I mean, yeah, that was quite profound. I'm actually surprised I haven't heard you do your own podcast just by yourself before. Unless you have, and I just haven't heard about it. Maybe it's like locked away somewhere, so to find it.
Well, I mean, it comes through in its own ways. You find the best way to express it, and that's really what every FX has strived for. When we can pick up the reins again in maybe some greater kind of effort. It can hit that next level of expression.
Do you think you have any ideas right now, whether just by yourself or with every effects for, say, marathon maps? Like I'd heard through the pipeline something about DINGLE's domain, but that might have just been rumor.
Yeah, I mean, DINGLE's domain goes larger than just a map. I mean, DINGLE's domain is it's a feeling. It's a frame of mind, and. I think really the next step is to transcend the 2D space of images and the really the multi-layered space of sound and to bring them into a single coalescence where we're making contact. I think that's the real next step is how does the zoo stop being a one-way experience? How does it become a two-way experience? I mean, if you think about it, we're really just neurons on the end of the supercomputer brain of the internet, and we're receiving all these signals and we're sending them back. But there's this interface lag, right? How do we cross that boundary? How do we step inside the machine?
I was going to say something, but I've just been kind of zapped. I've been zapped by what you said.
I think we may start to see the workings of an actual what might appear as a backward step, but is actually the necessary step forward, which would be some sort of revival of more archaic modes of thinking, and it would be through the fusion and the marriage, right, of this left brain and this right brain of ancient the humanity of our individual experience, along with the mountain that we've climbed in terms of technological advancement, and we've got to cross the schism where they can be branded together. As a way to move forward and survive, because I think without bringing them into accord, we're destroying ourselves. So it really is for the sake of all of humanity that we discover the way to stop living this sort of schizophrenic existence.
Yeah, and maybe that archaic mode would just be the unbridled imagination, in which case something like DINGLE's domain would appear. Maybe DINGLE's domain is already released and it just is only open to those who themselves are open.
Well, and that, you've just said it. I mean, you've just hit the nail on the head. That is Dingle's domain. That is Shambhala. That is the paradise that we're striving towards. That is Dingle's domain. That is the next step. That is the world we have to create.
Perfect. I can't wait to see what you come up with next.
I mean, it's all in the works. It's all coming at all times. It's just a matter of where to devote the energy for the next step, right? And how to band people together in pursuit of this goal, making this reality.
Yeah, we'd still have to come together for it.
It's kind of like it's like old dish rags, right? I think what makes a kitchen towel specifically, is that it is not good at absorbing whatever. I mean, have you ever noticed this? Have you ever noticed that the least absorbent towel you'll ever have in your house is a kitchen towel, like a kitchen rag, like something hanging off of a stove or a refrigerator door? It's like kind of a thicker material, or it's not a thicker material. It's kind of like a coarser material, right?
Yeah.
And it, if you ever try and clean up a spill of water or something with that, it's useless. They're terrible. They don't do a good job. They just kind of hang there and they get dirty, and it's after you, and you kind of resent it as a child growing up, that you have this towel that it really seems that that's the place you'd want your most absorbent towel. I mean, aside from a bathroom, the kitchen is where you're really going to need something absorbent, where you're going to make a lot of mess. And it's as an adult you start to see that the aesthetic, the appearance is also playing maybe the larger role. It's people are showing their kitchens in a different way than what can be shown for a bathroom, and your towels that you have in your kitchen, kind of, there's this expectation of what they should look like. I have no idea where this came from, and you keep them clean because they'll get musty otherwise. Right, but it's filling its function and it's filling its role. And even though in a sane society you would have a more absorbent towel, we continue to have a fairly unabsorbent towel that maybe looks nicer than a more absorbent towel. I don't know, or just it would be too thick. I don't really get it, but I think what it boils down to is just the momentum of maintaining a role or an expectation. And, that'll drive you off the edge of a cliff if you're not paying attention to where you're going.
Yeah, kind of like the less efficient QWERTY keyboards that we still use because we already know them.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
In this case, it seems like with those cloths that you mentioned, the detritus of anything starts to absorb them, the liquid and the detritus of everything. And such is it. It is here. I mean, maybe in some ways these games are playing us, in which case I'd immediately be the first puppet because I've done so much of it.
But it is an interesting thing, too, with getting absorbed into something so totally, again, to the towel that's not been cleaned in so long that it gets smelly. And the reason it's become smelly is because it's not just a towel anymore. It's a towel plus the bacteria growing in it from whatever you put in there when you swiped it up. So it's actually become something greater than it was before. It's become this other thing, and it's taken on a new odor. When you're putting that much concentration, that much energy into interacting with this thing, where you're kind of forgetting yourself and you're entering into this other world, during that space, you're really not you as the individual, which is an illusion anyways. I mean, you really only exist in relation to whatever you're interacting with. You're never just a solitary, uninteracting thing. So what do you become? What do you become when really it's your attention, your concentration of your mind that is the life essence of your existence? What do you become when you're absorbed into something? When you are absorbing the detritus of the mess of the kitchen and your growing bacteria, and you're becoming something more. You're becoming symbiont, or you're becoming an expression of an idea, maybe, of somebody's art that you've become enwrapped in, and you've become absorbed into, and you're living it, and you're giving life to it, and it's become something that it couldn't be without you interacting with it, and you are taking on that role for that amount of time, and you're living that expression.
Since you mentioned the cloths, what are your thoughts on the Q-tips? I asked that because it's a very important bit of huge lore, and
Well, it's been interesting. I'll tell you a story. As a child, I used Q-tips regularly enough, or more so, my mom would put them into my ear and clean my ears with earwax, and then I just was never partial to them. They just kind of seemed like you're sticking something foreign into your ear.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever really use them. But my ears would occasionally get some wax. I'd pull it out with a finger, like a pinky is the perfect size. And then about a year ago, I started working a job where I was using a lot of earbuds. I was using earbuds to listen to music to constantly. I had them in my ears all the time. And I'd wear them all day, like 8 hours a day, with these things in my ears. And I started getting, I was starting to develop the sensitivity inside of my ears. My ears started getting really irritated. So I stopped wearing it. But this, I aggravated something. I birthed something that was this new irritation in my ears. And, it kind of raged up and down, coming and going. It'd get itchy, and sometimes it'd just not be itchy, but other times it would be itchy. And one morning, after, several months of not wearing these earbuds, I woke up, and I went about my day, and I came back to where I'd been sleeping the night before, and there was this perfectly round stain, this brown, red, perfectly round stain on my pillowcase, right about where my head had been laying, right about where my ear would have been, where I would have been laying. And it looked like some blood must have come out of my ear in the middle of the night. I found that quite odd, slightly concerning, but I wasn't bleeding out of my ear still, so I kind of forgot about it. And the next day, woke up again. I couldn't figure out exactly what was off, but something was off. And I realized I wasn't hearing quite correctly out of one of my ears. This was, of course, alarming. So I stood up, and I could feel there was something inside of my ear. I moved my head a little, and I could kind of feel something in there. Stuck my finger into my ear, and I could feel there was definitely something blocking my finger from going into my ear. So I started to panic. What the hell is in my ear? And I discovered, though, through various moments of this frightened uncertainty of what to do, that if I jiggled my ear, I could get this thing to move. So I just turned my head to the side, and I jiggled my ear, quite rapidly, and just this fat old ball that was a combination, I think, of coagulated blood and earwax just slumped out of my ear and fell onto the ground. And I picked it up, and it was soft, and it was gooey, and I played with it for a little while before I threw it away. But after that, my ear hasn't really itched.
Makes you wonder about all the itching we feel in our ears every day. Maybe that was the start of many things to come.
Yeah.
Since we talked about cleaning, I want to bring something up to our audience. And it's something that I told you when we were at the Ground Control Barcade. But I feel it's important reiterating, because now I'm really getting down to working on it. As many of you out there may be aware, NEFX has put out a good amount of marathon maps and scenarios over the past year, which I'll get into more of. But alongside that, there have been some mini brewing ideas, and I am quite satisfied with the fact that the last episode I basically used as the only announcing space for the first time of scenarios that since come to fruition, such as Keyfinder, Marathon Keyfinder, the doomed myth of Destiny's Halo, and things of that nature. Also, I think, it was the Brutal Wheels pack, which I put out. 50 levels, Brutal Wheels of Steel Forever, which also has an entire soundtrack to it called The End of All Drones and Clowns, which is over 3.5 hours long, 52 tracks for not just the 50 levels, but also menu theme and what was going to be the ending credits theme. Ending credits and menu theme are basically the same now. But anyway, so it's relegated to a bonus track. But anyhow, what I'm driving at here is that I've been brewing this idea of a marathon cleaning scenario in which there's technically no combat, although the core mechanics of marathon that qualify as combat remain the same in that there are enemy classes and you have a weapon, but you're not actually killing anything, and the monsters can't actually hurt you. It's a totally non-violent, non-gory game, I'm pretty sure. But basically, instead of going around killing monsters, enemies, what have you, you only have one item that you are equipped with, a vacuum cleaner. And the enemy classes have all been, it's just one enemy class, and it's just a big fat dust bunny, big cloud of dirt that you have to vacuum up. So, as many of you are aware, I have these entire NEFX marathon level templates, including the one that spans, basically it's the one world unit grid that spans the entire possible space that you can cover for a marathon map. And I've been making levels that way for solo scenarios, like Keyfinder, and for that matter, Path Sifter and stuff like that, which I'll get into more later. But so you have these big, complex levels that you have to navigate around, and every level is extermination, meaning that, of course, you have to quote-unquote kill everything in order to beat the level, to proceed, to teleport out. But again, you're not technically killing anything, you're just vacuuming everything up. You have to go all around this map, and there are thousands, hundreds if not thousands of these dust bunnies, dust clouds. There'd be at least one per square. Basically as many as I could fit in there without crashing the map upon launch, since that's a common problem with some of us, certainly me and I think some people in the Eternal Development team like Aaron. We are both in our own different ways kind of maximalists about making levels, and we sometimes have to subtract stuff that we make because it is too much for the engine or whatever. But yeah, that's the idea I have in mind for one of the upcoming marathon scenarios, is just vacuuming stuff up. You go around and clean up all those dust bunnies with a vacuum, and then you can go out. And I've been thinking I might put in a Lua script embedded in all the levels, making it so that when you use the vacuum, it has unlimited ammunition in a way, but the idea is that, like with a normal vacuum, you can only vacuum so much before you have to empty the bag. So I'm thinking I would have it just slowly deplete the oxygen. I mean, this is, a vacuum scenario, so go figure there are going to be vacuum levels, right? In a whole new sense that you've ever known before. So basically, as you vacuum, the oxygen level depletes. Of course, in this case, it might be called something different, like vacuum bag capacity or whatever. And then if you let it go down below zero, then basically the vacuum explodes and you die with it. And you may not see the gore itself, so it might still not be a gory game. You could still, have your Grams play it. She won't have a heart attack probably, except for just horror, shock and horror at seeing all the dust bunnies and how totally filthy the level is. But that's why the player's there, to clean it all up. But you can keep going back to an oxygen recharger that's in each level of the scenario and recharge your vacuum, or not recharge it, empty it. So, filling up your oxygen is basically emptying it out. So accordingly, the oxygen recharge texture will have to be changed. But initially I was thinking about calling it something like Marathon Street Cleaner or whatever. But Windbreaker gave me this idea. I'm going to give him credit right now, and I'm going to do so again for the upload, the accompanying text file, etc. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. Well, I was visiting Boise last during some of the holidays for a huge giving specifically. We were shooting some pool, and when I pitched this idea to him, he said, "You should call it Marathon Sucks." So, you heard it here, everyone. January 6, 2023, Marathon Sucks, coming to simplicity.com near you. What do you think about that, Dingle?
I love it.
Yeah?
I mean, on multiple levels. I mean, not only is it satisfying to clean something that's so dirty, your mind just races with all these questions. Who let it get so dirty?
Yeah.
Why is it so dirty? What's the deeper message? Well, are we cleaning up ourselves? Are we cleaning up the world? Are we actually invading an alien space that we're just trying to mold it to our own liking? But these little dust bunnies, that's their world, But I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think it'd be a blast.
Yeah, definitely would be. Maybe that is going to be something I'll explore a little bit thematically in the terminal text, the plot, as it were, which might still be pretty cursory as admittedly. Most NEFX scenarios have been plot-wise, but still go over who left, who made this big mess, and maybe in the end it will come out that the dust bunnies did nothing wrong. It's actually the way it's supposed to be, and maybe we had built spaces around them that we weren't supposed to, and we're messing things up pretty badly. We're actually the ones making the filth.
It's kind of funny. My mind actually just goes to Spaceballs.
Oh, yes.
The Spaceballs, the Transformer ship that turns into the giant maid.
The Mega Maid.
The Mega Maid. Yeah. Giant vacuum.
Oh, man. If I hadn't thought of Marathon Sucks, I might have thought of something like that. Maybe I'll find some way to put that in, too. Yeah, I enjoy Spaceballs. That was actually... It's a testament to how I've done things sort of backwards. I saw that before I ever saw Star Wars.
Oh, you know what? I did too, actually.
Yeah.
So it's
all right. Well, that explains how we wound up the way we did.
Exactly. It still works though. It still plays, I think.
But any resonance you found between the idea I pitched and what you covered earlier about like the cloths and the Q-tips and all this weird stuff,
absolutely.
What we use to clean things?
I mean, there's the there's always two levels to how you can interpret something. I mean, three really. You could look at it on the surface. You can look at it through a personal lens, and then you can look at it through more elementary ideas. So, drawing it all back, if I were to connect it, on the surface, maybe that is just Spaceballs, and that's what my mind goes to, the satisfaction of cleaning. Then you go to it on a personal level, and the way that I think of interaction with my environment, my own relation to dirtiness and mess. I know a lot of people are similar, and everyone has a different gauge on this, but I certainly find that the dirtier my space is, the more stressed I become. The act of cleaning can alleviate that some level. That's the dream level, right? These are our dreams, and then the more elementary space. What's it telling us about our human experience, human condition? What are we getting to? What's our relation to this role? Maybe, and that's where it even comes down to, is a role in society. Do we feel this need to change our environment because we're uncomfortable with the way that it is? And it's this innate dissatisfaction that's kind of constantly leading to some kind of either our own misery or the misery of those around us. I think there's this great expression that people with strong convictions go around annoying those that don't, don't have them. I don't know. Do you fall into fatalism? Do you fall into the sense that there really is no greater purpose or meaning to anything, and that it's just this kind of chaotic spiral of suffering with little blips of delusion that distract us ultimately before an inevitable annihilation where we are obliterated alone, and it was all for nothing in some sort of cosmic prank. Is it just all a big joke on ourselves? Are we, we hold the keys to our own prisons, and we're the best guards, we're the best torturers. Are you cleaning out your own mind? Are you finding your own meaning in things and finding some sort of satisfaction through these roles that you'll establish for yourself in relation to others, because that's really where meaning seems to come from, and why isolation can be so destructive, so pernicious. But I think of it playing on all of these levels, and I think it's encapsulated perfectly with the title, Marathon Sucks.
I think you've touched on something that I might consider exploring a bit for the plot, really. I think it's important to have out there. Are we just dust bunnies in a vacuum? Never any vacuum levels. Actually, in thinking about your music videos, the NEFX stuff, I actually recently made, maybe it's my first music video in a way. It was a marathon music video, everyone. Some people noticed, and this is actually maybe the findings exhibit lately of me using the pointing a separate recording device at my computer method, which actually seems to fit pretty well. I've yet to make a marathon music video, or really general music video, with my own music, with NEFX music. But I would like to do that, and to that point, since I'm already on the track of making custom textures and whatnot for marathon, I could totally foresee myself making an entire map, a space basically in marathon, specifically for the purpose of music videos, or making multiple such spaces, and then having different shots in each of them for one. But that's for another time. In the meantime, I've started my hand at what we would call, sort of facetiously, MMVs, marathon music videos, kind of in joking reference to the AMVs of yore, which I'm sure still happen in some parts. The anime music videos, it's like an entire genre that gets this abbreviation people recognize. So I uploaded on YouTube this marathon music video. The song is Beer Bong by NEFX. So it just seemed appropriate that, for my first foray into, marathon music videos not involving my own music, I would, sort of jokingly go for the band with the most similar name, from which, admittedly, yes, NEFX's name was a bit derived. And there's other meanings and significances to that, but we won't get into that right now. Suffice it to say, Beer Bong by NEFX, a classic track of theirs, and the footage, marathon-wise, is all taken from excuse me, a fairly recent online event where Windbreaker, Tree Llama, actually, I don't think Windbreaker was in this particular match, but I think he participated at some point in this event. At any rate, he got the film file from Tree Llama and then made a YouTube video of it. So for a bit there, a lot of the community regulars got together and hosted a Marathon 1 stock net map only night, where they played through all the old classics from just the first Marathon game on Marathon 1. Waldo World Arena, Spiral Insanity, You Don't Need to See My ID, the original Arena, not Waldo World Arena, but just Arena that's slightly structured differently and textured differently. Mars Needs Women, of course, probably showered with grenades, basically all that stuff. Anyway, so I, with credit to Windbreaker for uploading the video and basically highlighting the shots that he did. I took footage from that match and cut it up and set it to Beer Bong by NEFX. And I also, at the beginning, you'll hear I overlaid a sample of a sports announcer in some old hockey game. My initial plan actually was to get like a sports announcer sample from like the Boston Marathon from maybe like 1994, because I thought that'd be funny to kind of cut that and edit that in to make it sound like they're announcing for Marathon, the game in 1994. I wasn't able to do that because it just seemed like none of the sports announcements I found for such events had that excitement to them that really fit the way that announcements for hockey or football would. So it makes it out like this is part of some big televised event, everyone pouring into Waldo World Arena to just blast the shit out of each other. And I even intercut scenes of like if you launch the game in, say, it's that in-game texturing thing, Vasara or something like that, and you turn off the HUD, then you don't show any weapons. Although actually, to that point, I've even started making these alternate scripts, physics files for the game in which no graphics show for weapons or anything like that. Just different edited things for the point of making videos, the type of scenes that I want without real complications. And so you get all these big pans around the arena, making it look like there's like this professional shot of the scene to kind of get the crowd pumped up, and there's like crowd noise in the background. It's pretty immersive and funny, especially because again I'm using the separate recording device pointed at the screen method for pretty much all the shots that you see, although it's so immersive that I don't think you necessarily see. It's like getting sucked into a vortex of awesomeness and total carnage. But that's just one of many things to come, so I just thought I'd mention here, if you haven't already seen it, check it out. It's already probably my fastest growing video, in the sense that it's gotten the most engagement that any of my videos ever have over the course of just one day, like 12 likes over 24 hours. That hasn't really happened to me before, so I'm certainly hitting the big time. But what do you think of this concept, Eddie Dingle, about like marathon music videos in general, or maybe how that sounds? I don't know if you saw it or not, but
yeah, tie it all together. I've missed out on this. I'll have to go back and watch that because I didn't realize. So I'm excited to check that out. I mean that harkens back to like OG YouTube. Back in the day. I really kind of found myself getting kind of wrapped up in what you were mentioning, kind of in the second half, talking about that with the idea of an announcement from Boston Marathon. And that actually reminded me back to the tragedy of the marathon bombing.
Right, yeah.
And then that kind of ties right into something I've really been trying to navigate, especially now. I've done some traveling and now staying in Portland and seeing different places and discovering this own anxiety, this kind of collective and personal anxiety around completely out of the central mode of the norm into the fallen depths of mental health. And people that will enter into completely antisocial behaviors that have really, split from any kind of connection onto a healthy grasp of normal society, normal life. I was about a week ago. I was nearly attacked on the street. Actually, I was walking down the sidewalk, and there was a man that was clearly in some sort of psychosis. He was having some kind of disconnect with the reality, and he was quite erratic, quite angry, and quite expressive. Mm-hmm. Saw him from about 2 blocks away. He was heading into my direction. I was heading into his direction. And he was the second he was within sight, he was already trying to talk to me, blocks away, right? Trying to yell at me, and I couldn't make out what he was saying, what he was yelling. He was kind of making these high-pitched screams, and I couldn't tell if they were just screams or if they were words, but there was this chilling kind of inhuman quality to the tone he was making. So I was trying to walk to my car, but he was obviously in the direction of my car. So I crossed the other side of the street, figuring I could pass him and then maybe loop back around. And I continue walking the direction. He's kind of just doing the same thing, but I'm trying to avoid looking at him. And we get to the point where we're at our closest, where we're about crossing paths from opposite sides of the street. And he just starts running at me. He just started running across the street directly at me. And he got within the distance of a car parked on the street that he had to go around. He was trying to go around. And he got this close to me. I hadn't looked at him, and I got a good sight on him. And he, one of his eyes was like swollen shut, like he'd been like hit, like in a fight or something. I don't exactly know, like some physical trauma. He'd been clearly, like, I think probably in a fight. His hair was all matted, and he was just screeching. He was just screaming, and it was like something out of a nightmare. And I just turned around and ran. I just turned around and ran the fuck away as fast as I possibly could. I went back inside. I did not go back outside the rest of the day. And I spent a lot of time just kind of playing that out again in my head on the way I reacted, and just kind of what is that? What happened there? Why? I mean, first of all, why is this a common enough experience that someone might have see something like this, have something kind of brush past with something like this, and the way that we respond to it. And I think initially I was finding myself abandoned to the terror of something I wasn't understanding, and really just kind of that fear was leading to some kind of erratic modes of thinking in how to shift, how to move myself forward in the world, how to be able to continue navigating myself, where I have to now digest this into my realm of experience, because I hadn't ever had something so directly exactly like that happen to me. And I mean, I didn't even get attacked. I just ran away from him. But I found myself wrestling with this anxiety around a thing that I think most people will find that it's kind of the grasp, like our own grasp on reality, along with others' grasp on reality, is kind of a tenuous thing, and there's really nothing more dangerous or frightening than a human, but there's also maybe nothing. Well, maybe not nothing, but certainly not that something that is not capable of so much beauty and love as another human can be. So I was left without any answers as I'm still looking into this, but I think that it highlights towards a theme that we have to figure out how to come to terms with, how to answer, and how to not be afraid to look at. And I think that was really what the driving thing was that I was struggling with, was a reckoning where I was forced to look at something where maybe I was too anxious to look at before. And I think that's where really the growing happens, and figuring out how to maintain the most skillful action in this world, how to develop the most compassion, how to but while not being bowled over, right? And how to maintain some kind of confidence and strength in navigating the world. So I think that's where we get back to the importance on the stories that we tell ourselves and the ideas that we live with in the world, and carnage, is another one of these games in which you are situated as a hero, marathon man, with essentially the only limits to your potential are what you are on the outside of the computer at the keyboard able to manage to pull off, but you're limitless in you're not inhibited by any mortal fear. You are able to execute to the best of your ability what you can to accomplish whatever you're trying in the game that you're playing, in the mission that you're trying to play, without getting lost in any kind of terror, because it's just a game. So if we can pull from that into our external lives, the way that we interact with the world, then we can hit those highs of that self-actualization and that skillful action where we're not inhibited by fear in our ability to interact with other people and the world. We're able to just simply put forth our best attempt to live as skillfully and as effectively as we can.
Yeah, that makes sense, because in each of these instances, whether we have the concrete thing in the form of a video file, or just something that's very much implanted in our minds because there's such a raw experience, we're going back over it again and again, and in a way we might fancy ourselves the author of its meaning and the editor of what we're beholding in our eyes and our minds. But to a degree, it's even known that the more you think something over, the more you might, to a degree, subconsciously distort it to where it becomes totally different in your head from how it actually transpired, or how you might have remembered it had you recalled it even an hour prior to your current version. And that's seemingly just as true with the concrete video files, where you're so pouring into it and you put your own story in it that may or may not be there. And of course, in this case, I edited one in there, sort of, or at least try to convey that for the audience. Yeah, it's heavy stuff. It's total carnage. And to the point, I should also say, everyone, especially now that I got this new recording method going. Well, first of all, I hope you're satisfied, because I know people were missing the days in which I would post on Discord by taking a picture of a document I had open on my office computer at work. I didn't think I'd return to that method, because now I work from home, so I have my personal computer right there next to my work computer where I didn't before, and as such I don't need to use that method anymore. And I explained to people before why I'd used that method before, and I'm sure some of you saw the document. I could probably fish it out somewhere. People were wondering, well, why can't you just use the computer directly, or why can't you just use your phone? And I had to write out a document to them explaining why I used that particular system. People lampooned it for it felt like years. It was really just months probably, but anyway. But you should be glad, because now it's back only in video form, because my laptop, as Eddie Dingle would attest from the time in which he attended, our one of our jam sessions, which by the way still has material left on it, but I need to make tracks out of. I'm behind. I have so much mountains of material to go through and make stuff out of. But anyway, my computer these days, my laptop is pretty sluggish. Ever since I got it, since I got it in 2016, after I inadvertently, as Captain JTech put it, graciously gave away my previous computer to a stranger on the bus, which is, the funny way of saying, I lost it. Started off pretty good, and now it's a sluggish mess that can't hold a charge and chokes when you try to save a plain text file, and anytime you try to record anything on OBS, regardless of configuration, it either gives you PowerPoint frame rate or totally choppy resolution that would likely get people to ask if it's recorded on a potato. But anyway, what I'm driving at here is that I recently got off of eBay one of those vintage iMacs, like the 2001 G3, one of those old color ones, the kind of big ones with the handles on it, which of course the trackers would say was for to make it easier to throw it in the trash. But I got that going, and I will be at some point in the future, probably during the summertime or whatever, showcasing certain marathon content that doesn't seem to translate very well on ALF1, and as such I'll be recording that probably on my phone or some other external device pointed at the computer screen. There'll be stuff like Marathon West, assuming there hasn't by that point been like a nice robust ALF1 version of something like Prime Target or Damage Incorporated or ZPC, whatever. I might showcase that, as well as like some Marathon 1 maps that don't seem to launch in the ALF1 version of Marathon 1 that I tried to launch for the purposes of the Marathon Arena Adventures, which I went through the Bungie archives. And by the way, I do still want to launch that back up again because I just kind of fell off it for a while. But even though, like I said, I'm not really playing much Marathon and outside of the Summer Slaughterfest events, because I'm mainly focusing a lot of my Marathon-related energies towards creating stuff and learning coding and everything, I do believe that I can keep up a certain routine of like 1 3-minute match per day, like in the morning before I start work or something like that. But yes, I just thought I'd let you all know that I have a vintage iMac that runs Mac OS 9, and you'll see not only marathon related, but maybe even non-marathon related stuff coming soon to a theater near you. Any thoughts on that, Eddie Dingle, before I go to a bunch of other stuff happening or that might happen?
Yeah, what else you got? I got nothing.
Okay. Well, I thought I'd reiterate to everyone that true to my word from last podcast, The Bend Core, I put out, like I said, Brutal Wheels of Steel Forever and the entire soundtrack, 50 levels, 1 track for each level and for the menu. All for wheels. And you can download it on simplicity.com, of course, with the 7 in place of the T. And it has specific instructions on there to get it to run, because you have to follow like a specific process for getting ALF1, downloading certain files that I think Deuce Tower had already uploaded there before, and putting them in the right folder and launching. So already the potential audience for this big thing that I spent months working on is considerably diminished. But if any one of you out there, even just one of you, like wants to dare to play through it, or even just try to play through it, because I actually don't know if it's possible to beat it. I did playtest all the levels, but most of them I playtested without enemies in. I used Tree Llama's Nature's Peace script, which undoes enemies, because I just wanted to test to make sure that it's technically possible to get out through the route that I planned. And that is true of all the levels, but I don't know how impractical it becomes when you turn the enemies on, because each level has basically like 1 enemy per square, and it's pretty wacky. So if you ever are interested in playing something like Wheels, which, as some of you may recall, and I covered it in the very first episode ever in December 2017, was like a sort of a game for physically disabled kids for power wheelchair training back in the late 90s. They used the Marathon engine, and they kind of infamously seemed to gouge the purchasers by charging dozens, if not hundreds of dollars for not only the game itself, but the accessory devices like the IntelliKeys and the what we call the Fat Sam joystick and the Fat Sam keyboard or mouse or whatever. If you want to experience the Wheels combat on an extreme level, and not only that, but even experience it with some height variation, which is never experienced before with the wheels context, because it was, sort of the Wolf 3D style, totally flat, uniform height levels were just totally just, you wouldn't even look up and down. Well, this is a big new experience for you. It's wheels unlike it was ever meant to be experienced, and it's pretty potent.
50 wheels to steal your lover.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty big. So please play and review today. You don't even have to play them all. I mean, you should, but I get it. You may not have all that time, and for that matter, they're really difficult, and I don't know how possible it is to get through them. But I mean, the thing of it is to keep in mind, every one of those levels was made Rebellion style. Most of the marathon maps that I make are Rebellion style, with supplies already there for you. So each time you start the next level, you're taking it back down to 0, and you gain whatever supplies are in there. So as such, you could really just use the level cheat to jump to a random level and record yourself playing that and reacting to it. But the more of that you do, the better. And there is an end screen and everything, an epilogue. There's a bit of a plot. There's an opening terminal and everything, which is also unprecedented for wheels. And I think you actually might like this, Eddie Dingle. It actually, thematically, the game is supposed to take place in the protagonist's mind as they are remembering, all the institutional conditioning they've been subjected to as it relates to who they are at this point. So they're basically in a dream, and they're going through different logical pathways within their brain to kind of undo some of that conditioning. And of course, it makes sense that it takes place in a school like the original Wheels did. So it's kind of like you're, going back to school to, not undo everything you learned, but just undo the bad. And,
sounds very psychedelic.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really proud of it, and no one's played it yet, so better hop to it, huh? But even if you don't, I love that I made it. And there's still the soundtrack, which can be experienced and enjoyed separately from that. So it really is. It really would be great if you would play it while listening to music. They really go together. What do you think of that, Eddie Dingle?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, that's sure. It sounds like quite an interesting project. Revisiting, I'm unfamiliar with the whole history around the wheels, but that's interesting. I love the concept on that. And what an interesting space to explore. Of course, I recently rewatched that. I don't know how many years ago it came out. The Silent Hill movie, and you've got trauma in school, I guess, together. Is where that kind of intersected for me, but I think that kind of harkens to just this kind of collective experience that a lot of people have, where there's this kind of death, this I think that's what it is. It's this kind of I don't know if it's melodramatic to phrase it that way, but everyone has a different experience with schooling growing up. I think for a lot of people it is this kind of constant dying that they're going through, where they're just having their freedom of self kind of depleted, and in some ways it's very effective, and it helps us become better, well adjusted. Maybe we're less of a nuisance on our fellow humans, but it's done with the delicacy of a jackhammer, I think, or more appropriately, it's a grindstone, really, where we're kind of having these harder edges, buzzed off of us, and it cycles back. It cycles back, and it it rolls onward. It is the wheels. It passes down generation to generation of this psychic pain that again maybe even doesn't come from the institution of the schools we were in, but it's at that age where we're all so sensitive and vulnerable, and we haven't been hardened into adults yet, where we're still so sensitive and highly emotional. It's kind of this keen sense you start to get as you get older that as a child you kind of have this keener, more volatile sense of an emotional sensitivity that kind of diminishes as you get older, and you find yourself asking if that is just a natural development growing into an adult, or if that's a learned experience that it just became too painful to feel so much all the time that you've learned to not give way so easily, so you're held back, and that's why you just continue that momentum like a wheel on going downhill, or like a kid in a wheelchair that had his brakes cut. You just can't stop.
It's like the bike guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, that goes on to a whole nother, sometimes you're just having a delightful day and you rode your bike all the way to the grocery store and all through the park, and you got these giant mangoes that you're so excited about because, I just had this magical day riding my bike on this beautiful day, and I got these giant mangoes at the store that I put into my bags on my bike, and I'm going to ride it all the way home. And I get inside, I'm so excited, I got these fresh, delicious mangoes I'm going to eat, and I just had this perfect day on my bicycle. And then you go to bed, and you wake up the next day, and your bike is gone because somebody stole it. And then you say, God damn it, what am I going to do now? My magical bike is gone. My magical day of riding my bike is never going to happen again. And this is why I get for having such a delightful experience. It was just too delightful. It was too pleasant. It was just too wholesome and fun. And somebody got to come and steal your bike and ruin all your fun.
That's what it's like.
That's exactly what it's like.
Damn. Yeah. You gotta transcend it, even if it takes doing so through the wheels, with the wheels.
Yeah.
And maybe, ideally, to put in some of those like pillars, those columns like I always put in to like block the thief so you can catch up. And
yes.
That's part of why I made this script recently, actually. It's a Lewis script. It's actually called Realization Through Ensnarement, per the usual modus operandi for NEFX invention titling. It's actually a Lewis script I made recently that I uploaded to simplicity.com as part of the ongoing updated NEFX mods upload, which, by the way, I did combine both NEFX physics files and NEFX scripts into NEFX mods, just kind of consolidate them all together, especially now that in this particular case it involves both the physics file and the Lua file. So it was kind of a long time coming, but that was the impetus for me combining the two just to make things more efficient in a way, even though I kind of like the idea of having as many different ongoing updated NEFX uploads on simplicity.com as possible to just kind of dominate the first 2 pages as much as I can. Just all these different excuses to keep uploading stuff. And people are I'm sure, pretty grateful that Deuce Tower convinced me that I had to, put these different files in the same uploads rather than uploading them separately, as was the case in, say, the Bungie archives days, because, it'd just be kind of dickish since I always release usually things like one at a time, like one map at a time for the most part. The main exception being the Wheels of Steel Forever map pack and everything, but, otherwise everything would just get flooded because I would just keep uploading the individual maps as separate releases on Simplicity, and it would just flood everything. But anyway, I updated NEFX mods, not only by combining the scripts and physics files that were already uploaded before, but in this case, relation through ensnarement, which is something where you use both the Lewis script and a physics file to randomly generate on any level you launch a bunch of those columns, those large cylinders, like the ones that I used to block your way in my used parts in Marathon Used before I largely settled on the usual 0.4 square unit tall squares to block you. Now I randomly generate those pillars, so each time you load a level, and you can, by the way, configure the number of pillars you want to load in a game, but they'll just pop up everywhere and they'll make it more difficult for everyone, and you can help trap your enemies by chasing them down paths that you know are going to be hard for them to get out of, and accordingly you can practice not only during the match, but just outside of matches, getting your way around those pesky pillars. So that's one script. And another script I put out is called Bringing All Back to the Raw Cult. And what this Lewis script does is, how I've talked about, Wolf 3D style maps, like with wheels, or perhaps for that matter, Pathways in the Darkness and the Marathon mods made for that. And of course I made several maps, including for some of these newer scenarios, that are Wolf 3D style in the sense of not just having not just being of uniform ceiling and floor height, with the possible exception of, again, those 0.4 world unit tall blockers, but also being entirely grid based, of course, because that's another common trait of NEFX maps, even though I have indeed and will continue to make maps that are not square, one world unit based. But in any case, this takes all maps. Anytime you load a map, it makes it all that way. It makes all the floor levels 0, all the floor heights 0, and all the ceiling heights 1. And a little bit has been done for the platforms, so that way there's less chance of you kind of getting stuck in them, since that often happens when the heights of the adjacent floors and ceilings are messed up that way. But there's even a screenshot you can see I uploaded it to Discord of what the stock netmap thread looks like when you launch the script. It's totally different. It's an amazing experience just being able to automatically completely alter how these maps are played just by changing and uniforming the height. And of course, it's funny because this is all too true to, I guess, NEFX lore and historical tendencies people notice in me, Admin 1. Oh, he's the guy who has done those goofy kind of Wolf 3D style maps and has all those pillars and blockers and everything, and now he's making scripts to kind of implement that automatically. You can play that all the time to troll your buddies in net play. And to that point, there's nothing stopping you from potentially making a script that combines all these traits. Like, Deuce Tower mentioned Iron's Lewis script that it's called Map Damager, that makes maps totally unplayable with like gimmicky stuff, and I mean literally unplayable. I could potentially make a total monster of a map that's, at least by some standards, please read that as Deuce Tower standards, practically unplayable by having all these traits combined together. You would have the uniform Wolf 3D style floor and ceiling heights, and the blockers, and who knows what else. I'd like to make a script that involves crushers, maybe makes every polygon into a crusher or something like that. But yeah, that's a couple of inventions recently from NEFX script-wise that will bring lots of joy, laughter, and exploration for years to come. What do you think about those?
I'm curious on the genesis or the impetus or the desire to continue for this because I have no experience with map making in Marathon, but this kind of distinct admin style for the grid based single unit maps. Where does that what's the inspiration for that distinct sort of style of making, where it seems to kind of go counter to creating a larger space seems to be more of a norm.
Yeah, a lot of it was just a matter of hacks to realize certain structural ideas that I had in a more efficient way. Because, as you might have noticed, like if you've, I know you said you haven't mapped for marathon before, but maybe you've heard or read or, maybe even watched like Windbreaker. Like I got to watch Windbreaker map for Huge. I was there in his room in 2017 watching him make some stuff, make some huge parts. Or actually, watching him make huge parts. And you find pretty quickly in trying to make maps, it's a pretty involved, lengthy process that involves, making sure that the polygons are arranged right next to each other, and then worrying about shading and texturing, and then from there making sure that what you tried to put in the bird's eye view of the map making utility translates in first person, which by the way you have to launch the game Aleph 1 in using one of those visual mode scripts like Vasara in order to actually do the texturing and lighting. So you're like going around in first person doing these things. You can't implement that as you draw on the map. I don't know how much this makes sense when I'm describing it. It's something that might sound a bit odd when you hear it, but when you do it, it makes more sense. But as I got along, I found that yes, I could do it, but I had so many ideas bubbling within me that to realize them at the level that I wanted, at the rate that I wanted, I would have to keep, I'd have to have some kind of a preset thing. So I started making templates because I figured, well, if you kind of, if you more or less flatten the structure into these uniform units like blocks, then it becomes just a matter of rearranging them to get the structural ideas. And at that point, I found that I could make an entire level where I make the grids, then go into Vasara in the game and manually texture and light everything in advance, where I would go in, that is, I would raise some of the platforms, like entire row of platforms spanning the entire possible space of the map, up a little bit. Then I'd go into the game in Vasara, and I'd texture and light each of them, so that way there'd be enough differential shading, enough variety in the texturing. And by the way, I am thinking at some point of doing a different version of that, where I texture them according to different patterns, having like maybe different quadrants or sections of the level have maybe a bit more uniform textures rather than just like one different texture for each side, because that creates kind of a cluttered effect that's pretty cool, nice, and distinctive, but sometimes that makes the levels ironically be a bit samey when you play them over and over again, because it's all the same stuff. And some people have even reported like having sensory overload or like getting migraines because the NEFX levels are so visually stimulating. Like even look at the preview pictures, there's just all these textures and all these columns going up and all these lights. It's kind of jarring, and it's something I tend to forget because I'm a bit nutty, and well, also because I made it, so I have a totally different view of it. It probably seems completely insane, but I would do that. I would raise the rows of squares, go into Vasara in the game, light and texture them, save that file from within Vasara, go to Wayland, check out of that save file so I can open up again, make sure that I didn't save the previous version of the file from before I altered it in the game in Vasara. It's kind of a wacky process, but basically I came to a point where I was able to finish that entire template, pre-shaded, pre-textured, pre-configured, and then from there it's just a matter of I'd like to get to a point where there's a version of Wayland that has like a sweeping eraser texture, because you can kind of drag fill polygons that are empty, but you can't drag delete them. And the template that I have, they're all there, so that way they always keep their lighting and their texturing. I like to, and this is sort of a plea. I don't want to demand anything of Treelom or whoever, and I know they've got a lot on their plate anyway. That's assuming that TrueLama would even want to do this, but it would be cool to have a sweep erasing texture or a sweep erasing function in Wayland where you can just kind of drag your mouse across to delete things and make them empty spaces rather than having to like manually click. Especially because when you zoom out far enough, when you try and click in a polygon, especially with polygons that are that small, the one world unit round, you sometimes end up hitting the line of the polygon instead, and then when you hit delete, it like deletes two of them. And of course, I can't blame them anyway because it's not like these, it's not like they made Wayland with nutcases like me in mind who would make maps the way that I do. But I just found that, I've made maps many different ways, including the conventional way. Like I've made normal, seemingly acceptable maps before, although those still never really had quirks and things about them that I guess people found annoying because I just can't help myself. I just tend to annoy people with my maps, and maybe in general, but I just figured that, I have all these ideas. I want to just get out of the way the basic groundwork for it and just get to realize them as quickly as possible. I'm very interested in the idea of efficiency where it's not that I'm just crapping these things out without feeling or that there isn't a concept or idea behind them. Especially with net maps, which sometimes end up operating sort of like a game show mini games, where I'm interested in the idea of configuring a map in such a way that even without physics or Lewis scripts, it's almost like its own game mode, because of the way that the environment forces you to act and interact. And I wouldn't be able to realize these ideas that I have at the rate that I have if I just did them the regular, normal 100% Douche Tower approved way. I'm kind of ribbing Douche Tower. But I know, he's great, and I know he secretly loves this stuff, even though he trashes it sometimes. But that was basically the impetus to it. Is I was interested in finding different hacks, different ways, and it felt more at home. It felt like a way to be distinctive because I figured, I'm never going to make an Eternal. I'm never going to be able to make a Rubicon. I'm never going to be able to make a Phoenix or a Huge or any of this stuff. So the only thing left is just kill it. Just like totally mess with it. And in the course of that, I made an entire distinctive style that's all my own and that actually feels good and fun to make. It's not like a matter of having to try and not necessarily keep up with the Joneses, but try to, worry about whether I'm meeting like a specific standard, because it's not like I've done that already with music. So if that's not the NEFX way, why not extrapolate that towards mapping and just go crazy?
Yeah, beyond just the sounds like the consciousness of efficiency and quantity, but maybe even a bit of an act of rebellion or protest on the norm, the standard kind of avant-garde or punk kind of spirit, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of rebellious. I said I had no experience. I guess it's not totally true. Windbreaker was showing me a little bit on how to craft something, and I was actually trying to make a model of the cathedral at Chartres.
Whoa.
And I found several things about the engine rather limiting. Namely, the inability to carve out empty space below an elevated plane.
Yeah.
That definitely I think maybe kept me from diving deeper into it. But it's kind of like with anything, you learn the quirks and you learn how to master it and you learn how to make it your own, and you can express whatever idea you're trying to get. And it's so funny how something will start to how something will end on kind of an unpolished or like a hatched idea is or an unhatched idea. It really is it's a like creating something. It's the act of how well you can translate it. Because if you could just directly pour it out, I think anyone would honestly be capable of extremely, extremely amazing things. But really, where the trick comes in is how you can execute it, how well you can make it, and So I think it's like anything. You just have to learn the limitations, and I mean that can even be its own kind of creative source. It can be its own kind of energy where you have to create creative solutions to counteract something that's limiting what you're wanting to do.
I think you could make some great maps. In fact, maybe you could start with the templates, because that's part of what I made them for. I still occasionally update templates, and many of them are more complete all the time. I think they even come with an accompanying text file, if not in the description itself, and the simplicity upload, going over what each of the templates does. So yeah, that would be a matter largely of just sort of pouring stuff in. And to the point about the issue with the engine's limitations, well, firstly, I can sort of feel your pain, because I've even thought about making a total triangles template, but that would end up crashing the engine pretty easily even before raising polygons, because as it is, like with the square one world unit square grid thing that I made, it launches by itself, but as I would save levels where there were more raised ceilings raised floors, lowered ceilings, more platforms, etc., it'd be more prone to crashing in such a way that I'd have to keep going back and figuring out which polygons to delete, in which case I'd then have to click pave textures. That way the textures would refresh on that now deleted column, so hopefully the wall textures would remain intact. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. I don't know the logic behind that, but I'd have to keep deleting them and going back into the game to see if the level will launch. I mean, it doesn't, so I have to go back and figure out which to delete. And eventually I reach a point where I've deleted enough polygons and the level launches without much trouble. But that's what happens with just the one world unit wide square polygons. Then it would easily crash or choke with the triangles. I don't know if any solution there would be to that. Hopefully that we can reach a point somehow where we can take Marathon really to the next level in terms of that, because I would love to have something like that where it's the triangles, or even smaller squares, smaller triangles, etc. And I think I even saw something like a Trahans Rove, that's how you pronounce it, a Marathon community member had, I think, demonstrated what Marathon can be capable of, and maybe it was the Unity engine or something like that, or something to do with Xcode. I'd have to look at it again, but that basically solved the issue that you were talking about of there not being able to be empty space below raised platforms. Because if you can find an advanced engine like that and then replicate the exact physics of Marathon in there and the assets and stuff like that, you could feasibly build entire wide worlds, open worlds maybe of the size of almost an MMORPG or something like that. You can build entire cities an actual entire city that isn't beholden to the same technical limits that the Marathon and LF1 engines are beholden to, but it's still functionally be Marathon, have the same textures, same enemies. You could feasibly replicate all the stats by looking through the physics files of the game and stuff like that, and the code in the engine to just make it happen with more possibilities, and make even almost I can imagine myself making these kind of Minecraft style worlds where you play Marathon in them and it doesn't choke or anything. It could happen
in the realm of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And then for that matter, I've thought about ways to modify the bot match scripts that Juice Tower made that was based on what Radburn made. I don't know how familiar you are with the fact that you could play against bots now in Marathon.
No,
Yeah. It's been around for a few years actually. Initially Radburn did it, where he would just alter monster classes, and he made specific levels that were modded with like embedded scripts to make it run kind of that way, but it was still limited in that, for one thing, the bots, they still kind of behaved like regular monsters. They didn't dodge or anything, and you couldn't respawn in the middle of the game. I mean, Douche Tower, the brilliant Lua programmer that he is, came along with the Lua script that, you know, took that to the next level, where you can respawn mid-game. You can opt for a timer, like timed matches, or a points-based match, or nothing. And he actually has bots that dodge and behave a bit more like human players. They're still very clearly bots, and they have their own limitations, but they also have some advantages in terms of like that mechanical precision. And it's also kind of funny because when you watch the bots dodge, I'm not sure what issue he ran into, but he couldn't make it look like they were dodging while running, so they're kind of standing still while dodging. They kind of look like they're ice skating, you know, marathon Marines on ice. It's pretty funny. And the other main limit is that you're still basically encountering them as you would monsters, in the sense that they're not each distinctive bots with their own names and scores attributed to them like you would have in a normal game. So basically you're only competing against yourself each time you decide to play a match, especially with like the same level and the same configurations of the script. You can choose how many bots you want. You can go well over the 8-player maximum for normal human games. You can go thousands. You can play it, and I'm definitely gonna, you know, upload footage of it and put it into marathon music videos of some of these shots I have. It's just thousands of bots just all piling together and just blasting the hell out of each other. It's pretty amazing. And the other main limit, which I easily modded just for my own purposes, is that because they're monster classes, they can't pick up weapons, which is actually something I've been wondering about, like ways that I could find to mod the game so that way. Well, first I'd have to test it out. Like, you know, I could test it so that in the normal game, if like if a 4 fighter steps on this item or that polygon, then it changes into another monster class. Because these different monster classes are, you know, the pistol guy, the fusion gun guy, the assault rifle guy, so they all spawn already with weapons. And that could be alright with like the more modern net maps that are made, where there are weapons everywhere. And so you practically spawn on a weapon and you're already well equipped, just like they are. But for the older stock maps, and for a lot of the older custom made net maps people have made, where you start with a pistol and like the rocket launcher is rare, usually, I mean, I have it set up so that, you know, only the bots spawn that have the weapons that are already on the map. But that means, because usually net games are weighted in favor of shotgunners and rocket launcher guys, right? Like those are the two main used weapons in the game. And as such, you'll get all these rocket launcher bots and shotgun bots on a map where the shotguns or rocket launchers may be very hard to find. They're definitely not as easy for you to find. They already get them, and they might not. Those weapons might not even spawn until a later point. And so it's like you're getting spawn killed over and over really quickly. It's like you wake up, get blasted, wake up, get blasted, and you keep trying to find the weapon to be able to compete against them with, but you can't find it. So I rectified this somewhat by making it, since they're monster classes, that they each drop the corresponding weapons each time they die, so that way, you know, you can get a hold of it quicker. And that's definitely made it more fair. It's still not quite true to the human multiplayer experience, but it's distinctive enough in its own way. Like, bot match is a totally different beast anyhow. You could be totally great at it and suck at human multiplayer, and vice versa even. I've played enough bot match at this point that I might be better at it than some people who are better at online multiplayer than me. But I'm really interested in finding how to mod it to make it in a way closer to the human experience, because certainly nothing can replicate the beauty of being able to play with the actual people, especially when you get to talk with them and everything. And, you know, now we have like Discord voice chat, so we can talk live like we couldn't back in the day, and do in-game text chat and reminisce after the meet server, you know, in the meet server after the game, like, wow, that was amazing. Did you see that? It was hilarious, because marathon matches are often hilarious. But, you know, it is kind of exciting to see where it can go with these bots, these machines really.
I mean, and that's really that's a big thing right now. I mean, artificial intelligence, intelligent art, artificial intelligence writing. I think it absolutely will become indistinguishable at some point, and it'll permeate all aspects, and it'll hit marathon, it'll hit everything. And it could be a paradise, it could be a hell. The pessimist says it'll end badly. The optimist says we could make it make it work for ourselves. But I mean, if you look at the reality, we're more efficient now than we ever have been in all things that we produce and that we are able to create. Yet we are working actually more than we have at other points, and with less advanced technology, and we're having less time of leisure. We're having less meaningful social interactions. We're just kind of whittling ourselves away here towards what? And it seems to be an masturbating issue, but it's another thing where it seems we're heading to some kind of breaking point, some kind of precipice. Are we going to meet? Are we going to rise to the moment? Are we going to go off the cliff? Are we going to be able to steer into a different direction to keep ourselves from creating our own extinction? I think that anxiety is felt by everybody. It really is a critical moment, and it's a mortal anxiety on a planetary scale. It's not something completely new. I mean, that's existed. It really was birthed with the development of atomic weapons. That's a more immediate threat, but if there's anything you can count on, it's the inability to see past a certain number of even hours or days, let alone years, into the consequences of our own actions. And if the past has been kind of any indication, without some kind of radical shift in consciousness, we are heading off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, and that's part of why there's this sense of urgency, I think, to document and preserve a lot of buried history, a lot of old lost wisdom.
There's so much to learn. It's the greatest irony too that we will. I mean, what was it in that city on a near Japanese coast where there was an engraved stone giving a warning not to build a city or civilization or housing or anything in this location because it was due to periodic flooding or tsunami or natural disaster of some sort. But we do it every single time. I mean, let alone every yearly flooding or storming on coastal cities. We'll always rebuild it, and it'll always get knocked back down until eventually we're just not able to build it back up. But maybe that's part of the problem, is this ability to spring back is kind of this innate perception that we can't ever break something totally beyond the point of repair. But if there's any lesson to learn from our brief excursions into space, is that it's a wasteland, and we're sitting in a garden that we're taking for granted, and it's our lifeline. I mean, really, we're just a conscious article of the earth, of the universe. I mean, we're made of the same stuff. We're just put together in the right way, but we somehow are able to disconnect ourselves from what we owe to each other and to the planet that we're on, to not take this for granted, because it could go away and we're actively destroying it. And we've got to get it together, and that's again where we have to have some sort of archaic revival of a reconnection to nature, married with our modern understanding of the world, where we can craft a way forward. Because obviously, we can't shut everything off. We're too accustomed to our modern life, and there are maybe things that are still in store that need to be birthed out of continuing our scientific and technological pursuits, but we have to have some kind of radical redistribution or reassessment on how we're going about it, because the current model is leading us to disaster.
Yeah, it's total carnage out there.
It's total carnage. And if you don't play your marathon, you could forget.
Yeah, it's one thing I've been working on lately. To the point about bot match and documenting history and everything. I've had this series marathon bot match adventures that I was doing for a while, and I need to get back to because I just kind of fell off for a bit. There's actually at this point a month's old video that I haven't uploaded because I don't know, I've just been weirdly lazy about that, but I do want to get back into it, like a match a day for a new map. When I say new map, I mean that I've been going through the Bungie archives, the old like custom uploads that people uploading, like normal maps, single maps for just like one upload in a way that simplicity, that wouldn't really be accepted, which is understandable. But stuff people made in like 1994 up through 2000, I think that's when the site was last updated, maybe 2001, 2002. But I've been going through all this stuff, this buried stuff, and running the bot match script in it, because it's great. I mean, as it is, logistically, getting these, getting people together who are willing and able to play those, really any map is difficult enough, let alone those maps, which I think are generally maybe a bit more frowned upon because we're used to now a certain standard and style of marathon mapping, which I can understand, and I definitely love and appreciate the great maps by Windbreaker, of course, Douche Tower, Ryoko TK, etc. But I think if nothing else, a lot of these old maps and the particular styles and the ideas that came with them in a way that isn't as present today are worth being documented. And so it's great to have this bot match script because I can finally experience the multiplayer experience for all these maps in a way that I couldn't if we tried to just get people together to play them. Because the bots, they'll play anything. They don't really have a taste. They don't have a choice. You set the bots up, you play the map, they'll be in there no matter what. And so I've just been having this endless adventure of all these maps from all the years, and it's nice. It's a nice bite-sized adventure because it's not like you have to reach a certain threshold of progress or whatever to get through the levels in the way that you would with a solo game, or to even have to explore the whole space, because obviously usually net maps are much smaller and much more easy to navigate and fully explore. So I've been having a hell of an adventure with them, and I'd like to keep that series going and potentially play them all. I'd love to play as many marathon maps as possible. There are obviously other priorities, some more pressing, whether they relate to life or creativity or things in the community. But even just like I said, a map a day, a 3-minute match on a map each day, I can do that, even outside of the summer Slaughterfest events. So I want to go all the places, and for that matter, to eventually explore all the solo maps too. There will come a time when my marathon playing isn't as punctuated anymore as it's been lately, when I feel I've reached enough progress. I think it might even be sooner than I initially thought it would be, since I'm already doing Lewis scripts and I'm making maps and physics files and things to my standard and liking. Really the final frontier before I feel comfortable enough going back to playing on a regular basis is loading some form of coding and development on the level. Maybe I couldn't be exactly on the level, but in the same zip code, let's say, of the expertise of Tree Llama or Douche Tower, or perhaps Irons, or a lot of these other big people in the community who have pioneered a lot of development and coding for marathon, or just know a lot about it and been able to extrapolate from it into other areas of development, or even vice versa, where they've applied knowledge that they learned even like university about Lua code in general, or Python, whatever, to marathon. I mean, that's basically, I think, what Douche Tower did when he secretly found a way to generate all those huge levels. He hasn't ever think, disclosed how he did that exactly. It's like, it's that big puzzle you're supposed to find out. That's one of the things I'd like to sort of find out, because I'd like to make something similar. I'd like to, I mean, I told you before, in general, I'd like for NEFX to be something that just kind of never really ends. And to that point, you know, for me to accomplish that, since eventually I'm going to, you know, bite the dust bunnies, I'd like to make some kind of a scripts or generators of my own, in particular when it comes to marathon maps. You know, have these kinds of components, or sort of like huge parts, just these different little building blocks that you can kind of recombine, and maybe I'd release different versions of it where, you know, each version has more detail to it and more different huge parts. You can just feed stuff, you know, different choices into a generator, and it spit out hundreds, thousands of NEFX marathon maps or something like that. And for that matter, tracks and text pieces and stuff, where I'm melding, you know, my own thoughts and ideas with, you know, the mechanical and all the different possibilities that arise out of us. That way, years down the line, generations down the line, you can still get new NEFX stuff after I'm already dead. But that's on the horizon.
Path to immortality.
Yeah. Or at least so it would seem.
Yeah, well, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make more stuff. I always do. It's kind of crazy. And to that point, I don't know how many of you out there have noticed, I've pretty much put out 5 scenarios. I did so like over the course of a few months towards the end of 2022. Not only did I make the Brutal Wheels of Steel map pack, Brutal Wheels of Steel Forever maybe is what it was called. I don't remember all the titles to my own stuff, especially because there are so many of them, and I tend to come up with the titles like as I'm releasing it, just based off of my general impressions of it and what I'm trying to convey, and I just go and move on. And then, you know, you could probably make up, oh, do you remember how you made this thing? You can make up a title on the spot, and I would probably believe that it was a title, I just don't remember it. But for one thing, I made, of course, like I said, Marathon Key Finder, the doomed myth of Destiny's Halo, which I don't know if you picked up on the significance of what the title is saying. I mean, it does have its own unique meaning, but it was actually brought on by the fact that we noticed in the Marathon Discord, people would often bring up, even in the Marathon General sub-Discord, off-topic games like Doom, the other FPS that Marathon is often compared to, Myth, one of the other big games Bungie Software made, Halo, of course, and Destiny. So yeah, basically 3 famous Bungie games, and then Doom. And so you know, I made a game with a title kind of making fun of that. But it's funny, we talked about messes earlier, especially when you asked about, you know, who made that mess, like in Marathon Sucks. Do you have to go vacuum up a bunch of dust bunnies all over a big ass map? Well, in this case, there is also a mess, but it's a bit different. Again, the plot is kind of cursory, just to kind of, you know, justify it, to kind of have fun and trying to find a way to justify the way that the game is and how it looks. And just also because it just feels nice and familiar to have terminals in Marathon with characters that tell you what's going on or what to do, or different content, of course. But in this case, Marathon Key Finder is where I think you stumble into this old kind of, well, it's an abandoned storage complex of state-of-the-art technology, since of course it's my way of trying to thematically justify the square units that I use. You know, I like this idea that you've stumbled across this abandoned storage place that consists of these tightly compact storage containers that are stacked on top of each other, and have the technology where they're able to kind of slide up against each other without damaging the other. There's a bit of an explanation of that in the opening terminal, and they have these like fine, thin screens that are able to display whatever they're configured to display. Usually information about the items contained in the storage containers, but in this case, the artificial intelligence that's tasked with running a lot of the operations there, after it got abandoned, they sort of took it over, and so changed the displays in all of the storage containers, and the storage container complex has been inexplicably overrun by all these monsters and pests. And so you stumbled into an Ajar portal, you can't get back out, and the AI tells you, well, I'll help you get out if you help me find all these key cards to bring to me so I can unlock some systems that I guess some of these bugs hacked. Because the AI, in their boredom from the complex being abandoned, started arranging all these different storage unit sectors according to their own imagination, which helps, justify the weird, totally functionally gameplay-focused structures that I made the levels out of. There's no rhyme or reason why any place would look like that, unless you have that kind of ridiculous explanation. So all the levels in Marathon Key Finder, Dune, Myth of Destiny's Halo are retrieval based, meaning you have to collect the 7 key cards in each level, then bring them back, then you'll get teleported out. But, and this is where the templates get really crazy, it's overrun with monsters. The plus side is that it's also overrun with supplies, although that also complicates things because there's so much shit all over the floor, it's hard to find the key cards. So that's part of the challenge. That's what the scenario is meant to be about, is just, really training your patience and your perception, how good you are detecting things, your visual learning, where you can find the keys amidst all this mess. That's one thing the AI says, it's a big mess, please help clean it up. And of course, the more monsters you kill, the more you have a hard time finding the key cards, because then there's all this carnage over the floor in addition to all the supplies. So I made a template, which is a modification of the original template I talked about before, of all filled in grids, all pre-textured, all pre-shaded. And now for each level, there's a preset number. It's items in every square, and I cycle through all the available items basically for the most part, set their weapons and ammunition. So that's how you'll always be balanced as far as having enough supplies. There's never a question when I'm making a map of, how am I going to make it so that there's enough for them, but not too easy, but not too hard. This way it all evens out, because you have supplies in each square, but you also have monsters in each square, so you have to just explore further, and it's such that, you still have to struggle to survive, but you don't lose supplies faster than you accumulate them. And by the same token, you're not just totally getting everything all the time. But even if you were, it's still even out, because the combat is so intense. Compounded by the fact that in most of the levels I put in an embedded script that makes it so that all the monsters are friends, so you can't just lure them into infighting like you often could in the original game. So you're really, it's you against everyone. It's totally insane. It's totally packed with monsters, totally packed with supplies, and you have to find these chips. It's not quite like finding a needle in a haystack, but it is still pretty ridiculous. And to that point, I've not only made, those kind of flat 3D style levels, but I also made the really maximal ones where I try to get the most height possible in a map, in addition to the most length and width. So I'm pretty sure, some of the biggest and most, in some ways, most complex marathon maps ever, because I've just gone for broke on it. There's even one level I made for the scenario, because again, I release maps one at a time usually, and I put them up in an internet archive directory that's constantly updated, and then I let people know it's updated on simplicity.com, so you can keep going to that to download the new map if they already have everything else, so we don't have to keep re-downloading the same whole package to get that one map. But I made one map where there's actually no enemies at all, but it's just a big, complex place, and there are still crushers in there, so you could still die, but you just have to find your way around. And each level already comes with a triple shield charger and a save pattern on all 4 sides of the map, so that way it's still pretty fair, but you just have to really manage yourself, and in order to save, you have to go to one of the 4 sides, although occasionally I've put one dead in the middle, but it's still pretty well balanced in terms of being really challenging but not being impossible. That's the thing. It's like all these maps have the carrot on mistake of very clearly not being impossible. They're just really out there and insane. So that's what Marathon Key Finder is.
Nice.
Why do I feel like I just had a workout after I keep going over to spill over all these things?
Oh, I like it. Just dig yourself deeper.
Yeah.
Make a bigger mess, and you gotta clean it up.
Mm-hmm. So that's one more form of it's a different type of mess.
Yeah.
I keep making a lot of marathon scenarios about messes.
So
Maybe it's because my maps look so messy, because it's just everything, but still arranged in some kind of logical fashion where you can see the logic in there. I mean, people have seen it. I've seen Aperture Grills and Cassis both live stream themselves playing a standalone Infinity solo map I made called Mino Transformation that was made from that same original grid, and it was basically a fortress infiltration level. It was basically the precursor to what became Key Finder, since that you do have to find several different key cards, but they're mostly in this fortress, and you have to go around and hit a bunch of switches to get in, and you have to go to all these places. You had like ramparts like a castle or fortress would have. It's ridiculous, but yeah, there's Key Finder. I mean, I'm sure you remember when I pinged you about Marathon Nampa.
Oh yeah, that brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How have you played it yet?
No, I really haven't. Have not been in done anything marathon in a while, so I'm far behind. I'm way behind on getting caught up. But I definitely plan on it. I love the concept, so I definitely will definitely want to check that out.
Well, that's right. I mean, you have the right mind, I can tell anyway, where you can just dream marathon, and then that's it. That's all you need. You probably in that way are playing marathon more than any of us are actually, because you just ascend to that high of a plane.
Just never leave it. I'm just always there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought sometimes about ideas of writing a lot as an expression and kind of a spark of thought and ideas. And I've semi-jokingly thought about, what if I just played marathon by writing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, to that point, have you ever played Marathon Revelation?
Mm-mm.
Did I tell you about that before? I probably did at some point, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I can't recall.
Yeah, Marathon Revelation was a different kind of an alternative marathon scenario I made that I might still make levels for. That where it's again totally non-combat based. It's based heavily on the terminals, but there are still crushers, and here's how it works. For each level, there are a series of chambers. Every first, third, fifth, etc. chamber is just a small one with a terminal in it. You read it, and it's one of my NEFX text pieces. So you have to read through that in a terminal. Then every second, fourth, sixth, etc. chamber, you look on the left side, there's a series of walls, usual squares. And for each of those platforms, there's a wall in front of it that has a letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, And then you go to another terminal in that chamber, and it asks you a multiple choice question based off of the text piece from the previous chamber. And you have to step on the right platform for the right answer to get teleported to the next chamber to repeat the process again until you teleport out. If you hit the wrong one, it crushes you to death. And you also can't use the automap, because I put in a Lua script where if you try to hit the automap, it immediately kills you and says, don't cheat. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I already covered this in the previous episode, but I figured it's worth reiterating anyway. So I've even thought about, taking a different approach to it, where it's not just about NEFX text pieces. It could just be like, without even having the prior reference text piece, it'd just be like a general quiz game. It might ask you general facts about the world, about history, science, etc., and you have to answer right. And you could feasibly, cheat by trying to look it up on Google, but to that point, I might end up making the answers a bit more difficult, where it wouldn't be so easily Googleable. It wouldn't be totally esoteric per se, but be that nice middle ground. You'd have to step on the right platform to get to the next part. The only issue being that one particular marathon community member found that it's actually faster to get through the level by just trial and error, rather than by actually reading the thing and then trying to answer correctly. I mean, it's still different for like people who actually would want to play the game properly and play it in good faith and try to learn something from it. But I have thought about, I might have to find some way to mess with things Lua-wise, so that way, like, maybe in the terminal it generates the different right answer, or the different letter for the right answer, then you have to step on a different one each time, so you have to actually pay attention. We'll see what happens, but yeah, a quiz, NEFX based quiz game for Marathon called Marathon Revelation.
Nice. Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
No, it's great. I love it. You really can explore like a lot of different modes. It seems got a lot of different avenues you could go.
Yeah. I haven't run out of ideas. Did I tell you I made a Marathon 52 pickup?
Oh yeah, I think I do remember you mentioning that one.
Yeah, that's the thing, everyone. Marathon 52 pickup. You pick up 52 cards and you win the game. I set it up that way. Another Lua script thing. It makes it sound like I'm some Lua expert, but I'm really not. I've just found like ways to do really simple things with really simple scripts that just no one else has bothered to make yet, at least in that particular way, and just leveraging them into these ridiculous ideas. But I think I'm slowly getting better at Lua. I'd love to be able to comprehend something on the level of like Deuce Tower's Bob match script, because that's pretty long and advanced, at least for me. I'm sure that's for a noob like me, anything like that is pretty advanced. But yeah, working towards learning more stuff like that. But yeah, there's Marathon Revelation, there's Marathon 52 pickup. Sorry, my mouth's getting like all stiff and like starting to slur.
No, yeah, we haven't had any water or anything.
Oh yeah.
But should we end it there?
Yeah, you know what? I could go on forever, but I could just.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. I gotta be up at 5.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's all right. I mean, there's always some other time, really.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we're probably, what's this, like 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is over 2 hours. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This was a pretty good episode, and I feel like it just never quite stopped flowing, and I already have like a backlog of stuff for next time. So thanks very much for listening, and keep on playing Marathon and contemplating on what we said. This is definitely something to draw on for a lifetime.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me over. I can attest, by the way, his place is very clean. Like everything he's talked about, it's not just talk. It's very nice and clean in here. So, all right, see you all next time. Bye. Ooh boy, I need water.
Yeah, here, let me get you. I got tap. I got sparkling water. I got hard seltzer.
Oh boy. Yeah, like seltzer water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this stuff. Probably my favorite type is the orange vanilla.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I tried that one. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's usually on the brand Polar. It has a little polar bear on the bottom.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's funny. I was down that aisle, and it seems like there's, I think it was LaCroix initially, and now there's like 50 brands. Like,
yeah, it seems like it got really popular suddenly.
Yeah, bubbly and yeah.
Is your thing still on? Is it still recording?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to turn that off.